Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. It means the world. Thank you very, very, very much. And today we welcome along one of the best directors in London right now, and whose work I've admired over the last few years, particularly over the lockdown years, which we'll get onto in just a moment. And that is, of course, the brilliant Simon Evans. So let's take a moment to introduce Simon and his work for anyone who is unfamiliar. So Simon is a Cambridge grad, like his sister Lucy Eaton, who's also been on here as well. He is one of the most celebrated directors in the London theatre scene right now. He has tackled some of the most well-known texts on the literary canon, as well as bringing new writers' work to the London stage as well. His work for the theatre includes Killer Joe with a certain Orlando Bloom at the Trafalgar Theatre, Rubber Room at the Old Vic, The Irresistible Rise of Arturo at the Donmar with a certain Lenny Henry as the lead, and Lucy, his sister, in the cast as well. Silence of the Sea, also at the Donmar, Almost Maine at the Park, and Alligators at the Hampstead, and is currently the commander-in-chief of this smash hit revival of Edmund Rostand's, hope I've said that right, classic Cyrano de Bergerac, currently playing at the Noel Coward Theatre after a successful run at the RSC, led by the brilliant Adrian Lester. On top of this, Simon has created, wrote, and starred in something you might have seen over the lockdown years called Staged, a drama that brilliantly captured life in lockdown and is still streaming now on BBC iPlayer, starring Michael Sheen, David Tennant, Samuel L.Jackson, Lucy again, amongst many other famous faces. All this and much more, but in the meantime, Simon, welcome.
Oliver, hi, lovely to be here. Thank you for that incredibly generous introduction.
No, it's all you, mate. It's all you.
Oh well, it's lovely to hear it sort of laid out like that. I should say as well, Stage co-created with a guy called Finn Glynn. I don't want to take sole credit for the creation of that. It was his. He's just a genius, and he was the one who sort of went. I told him early on in lockdown we were talking about projects, and I mentioned that an artistic director of, in fact, it was Dan Evans, who was the artistic director at Chichester at the time,
yes,
where I was supposed to be doing The Real Thing, had asked me when there were rumours of this lockdown happening. He was like, "Do you think you might be able to do some rehearsals via video call with your lead actors?" And I mentioned this to Finn, and it was Finn who went, "There's something in that." So yeah. Special.
Yeah, and we need to keep, and also I think it really was a love letter to the industry, and particularly to actors during that time as well. It was just so refreshing to watch. But anyway, we'll get on to Stage in just a moment. But we start at the beginning. So in your case, Simon, where did it come from? The love of directing, being in this business, the arts, where did it come from?
Well, a couple of things. I'm the child of dentists, as of course is Lucy, my sister. Yeah, two dentists. So it wasn't a sort of active part of life when we were young, except that my parents were both very creative people and sort of took us to the theatre a lot, and I was always interested in that side of things. But for me, it was really becoming a magician, which I did when I was 13 years old, and I sort of fell in love with that at that point. My dad had a little book of tricks, which I learned a few card tricks. And I just started a new school, and it became a really useful thing to be able to do. And it's at that sort of time when you'd start a new school and you don't know who you are and you know what your place is. I was the magic boy. Magic was the sort of thing that I could do. And then at various points in my life, the first time you want to get a Saturday job, and I was doing magic tricks at Pizza Express, or the first time you want to meet girls in a bar and you have some, this is a thing that you can walk up to people you don't know and just do some stuff. And it was a sort of companion for me. And that led to putting on magic shows, which led to sort of an interest in being on stage and acting a bit. Then I went to university and there did a lot of acting and a lot of magic, and started to do more and more directing there as well. And I just found that I find acting a terrifying thing. Like, I have nothing but I adore actors, and I have nothing but respect, like really, really profound respect for the ability to just sort of walk on stage and do this thing in front of people. And I just didn't have the courage for it. And I didn't have the tenacity to endure what this industry asks of you as an actor, and that sort of feeling of being a bit powerless at times. Whereas directing, perhaps mistakenly, I felt you had a bit more agency with it. So I moved into directing and pursued that, and moved to London and directed a few shows on the Fringe, which did well, and one of them got a transfer to Trafalgar Studios. This is about 20 years ago now. And just, you start to find your way through it and start to meet your people. And yeah, so that was the sort of introduction. So magic into acting, into directing. Seemed
Nice.
to be the right combo.
Do you still have card tricks for dinner parties and stuff?
Right here, two decks of cards.
Of
Yeah,
course, you
but
never
it's
forget them.
you never forget them. It's riding a bike, but also it's. I mean, I can talk about this till the cows come home. It's an interesting thing to work out where directing and theatre making in general, and any kind of storytelling and magic coincide. And there's a huge amount, especially in Cyrano and in staged, I suppose, a huge amount in those which is magic, is the sort of same storytelling devices that you'd use if you were creating a magic trick, trying to surprise people, trying to get them to sort of buy into a set of rules for something so that something surprising can happen later on. Like I usually have a moment when I'm directing something where I look at it and go, oh, that thing that I'm doing there, that's a magic trick. That the reason I've done that there is because I've learned that from this effect or this, that, the other. And yeah, they share a lot of DNA.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, it's funny how because like magic into directing into the theatre, it makes you think like how do they fit together? Of course they fit together, and you don't think about it at the time, but then you sort of look back and you go, oh yeah, all fitted together very neatly.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there's a sort of willingness or an eagerness to try and go back and ascribe some logic and some, some sense of determination to a journey that you've had through this sort of chaotic industry. And I don't know how true that is. I don't know how much the choices that I have made were choices or just, oh, I have to do this now. But I certainly look at those various things that I've done and go, oh yes, for something like Cyrano now, which is a beast of a show, you do go, God, yeah, the things that I have learned in the various different things I've done all come together in this, and that's a very satisfying thing to recognise.
Yeah, absolutely. More on that in just a moment. But so I mentioned in the intro, you went to Cambridge, Simon. How was Cambridge?
Cambridge was amazing. I mean, it's an amazing place to go. It has an incredible drama scene. I mean, I didn't have the best time there. I don't think. I mean,
oh really?
Yeah, you're in that sort of strange period of your life where you're finding who you are, and you might be very good at something, and you're the big fish in the small pond of your school, and you go to Cambridge and suddenly you're around lots of other people, and there's a certain amount of, I don't know, I probably had quite a chip on my shoulder. I was the first person from my sort of family going back a few years to have gone to Cambridge, and a certain sense of, I don't know, resentment of other people who were sort of part of more of a family line coming to those universities and going, why, how do they know how to get in there or there or there? And I found I didn't quite settle there over 3 years. I mean, I'm very grateful. I'm hugely grateful for the education I got, and I'm hugely grateful for the opportunities I got to direct and to work, and the community there is amazing. But yeah, I came away from it at the end going, oh, I wonder if I would have had a better time somewhere else. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not too personal question, but what do you think were the factors that kind of got in the way of you having a good time there, do you think?
I think I probably got in the way. It's not too personal at all. I think I was, like, I've been a very shy kid at school. Magic was a big vehicle to sort of, I mean, I joked about it before, but to allow me to talk to people and to have some sense of an identity in a room of strangers. And then in my year out, I spent a lot of time in America doing magic on the streets, and I went off and became a sort of scuba diver over time there, and changed quite a lot in that year. And then came to Cambridge, I think, with a sort of arrogance, I suppose, and a real sense of, like, it's a world where Cambridge is a world where there are these huge institutions that you want to be a part of, and I feel like I maybe had quite a fragile relationship with those things. Like, I remember a feeling of applying for the Footlights the first time, getting rejected by the Footlights, and sort of the attitude being, well, fuck you, I'll put on a magic show then instead, and I'll do that. Like, I feel like I was probably quite combative in that environment, which isn't a nice way to be in that situation, and a sort of determination to do well and get the grades, and to also be the best at this and this and this. And all of that is, I don't know, as I get older, it's not a helpful way to go through life, I don't think. And it means that you're not open to really getting to know other people or being open to experiences because you're quite myopic in your focus. And I think that just stood in my way a little.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, but everything happens for a reason, and here you are now. So
Here
yeah,
I am.
yeah,
Well, that's it. That's
yeah,
it.
mate, it's amazing. But yeah, so yeah, Cambridge. I mean, I know I spoke to Lucy about this as well. Like the drama scene at Cambridge gets a huge amount of press. I mean, people say, like you said, they're the footlights. They've produced talents like Stephen Fry, Hugh Laurie, all these Rowan Atkinson, Emma Thompson, all these amazing, comics and actors as well. So the theatre scene in Cambridge. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, I didn't go to Cambridge, but what's it like? Why is it so special? Why does it get talked about so much?
I think there's two parts of it. So there's a Cambridge is made up of a load of different colleges, and each of those colleges has its own drama society, or most of them do, and most of them also have their own performance space in there. So the opportunities and the spaces where you can put work on are pretty vast. Like there are so many different opportunities, and the idea of those spaces is always they're really encouraging of entrepreneurship, I suppose, and I don't mean that in terms of a financial thing, but I suppose someone has an idea to do something, there are ways there at Cambridge that you can make those things happen. And there are so many different venues. You're not, there are other universities where there might be one main theatre or a few. Therefore, there's a huge amount of competition for those spaces to be someone who's putting on work. Whereas at Cambridge, there's so many opportunities. And in addition to that, there's various pretty high profile tours that go to America or around Europe. Or there's one director every year gets the chance to direct a big musical at the Cambridge Arts Theatre, which I did Singing in the Rain for them in my final year there. Like all of those are amazing opportunities. And then on top of that, there's the Footlights, which is this sort of comedy engine that, who was there when I was there? Will Sharp was there. He was amazing. Simon Bird and Joe Thomas from The Inbetweeners.
Wow.
Those people who then just sort of go on and do that sort of work. And the Footlights is such an incredible incubator of that because it is every week. There's the smoker. Everybody comes together. There's a real engine, make more stuff. Then there's the Footlights Panto, which was when, I was the dame in the Footlights Panto in my final year. And all of those things just gives you so much opportunity to try stuff out, to get better at it, to hone it. I think that's it. It's not a quality over quantity thing, but it is if you want to be that person, if you want to be an actor there or a director there or a comedian there, the opportunities are myriad, and you've only got yourself to blame if you don't sort of jump in, really. And I think that's why it's such an incredible incubator for that. Just the opportunities to make stuff and to get good at, or at least better at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what did you study at Cambridge?
I did a sort of mixed degree. It was an English with education and drama. So educational sciences, psychology, philosophy, and English literature and drama.
Wow. And from what I've heard, it's like obviously because English is quite a highly competitive course, I think, at Cambridge. And I heard some crazy story one time that they were set 4 essays a week or something like that, or something crazy, and they expect you to have like an A-level, A-star standard knowledge of I think it's Lucy's having talked about the tragedy paper that you have. You need to expect to have an A-star, A-level base knowledge just to begin with before you even sit down and write a paper. We know a thing or two about a lot of plays, but just to have that kind of academia knowledge in your head the whole time, it just seems to be a lot to ask. Yeah.
It is, but the great thing about it is that their teaching system is this tutor system, which turns things into a really Socratic learning environment. So it's not just read about this, write an essay, get the essay back, go to a lecture, write an essay on it, get it back. You write an essay, then you sit down with your supervisor, and that supervisor will sort of tear your essay apart in front of you and force you to defend your arguments or challenge you to think of new things. And that's amazing. Up until that point, education is quite one way, isn't it? It's by its nature, it's a teacher going, here are the things you need to learn, and you try to learn them, and you giving back is you writing your essay and handing it over and getting the mark back. Whereas this felt like that was for me the amazing thing, was to go, I have an opinion on, I wrote a dissertation on Paradise Lost, and to sit down with people in that in that environment, and when you sort of got a first draft of your dissertation and they just rip it to shreds, and which is not always, you hand it in with a slight sense of, I'm pretty sure you'll be quite impressed by what I've done here, and then an academic will just rip it up and you sort of leave with your brain sort of blown, and that's amazing because it's very good training, I think. I'm sort of only thinking about this now, but it's a good training for directing. It's a good training for any sort of argument or discussion. It's good training to get into an environment with somebody and go, I think it's this, and somebody else going, well, what if it's this? And where do you dig your heels in and go, no, it is this? And where do you go, wow, amazing, I've not thought of that before. Yeah, let's try and open our minds to that as well, which, again, as I'm only just sort of thinking about this now, as I said, but it's certainly something which in later years I've tried to bring into the rehearsal room as well. Maybe I got it all from there. Maybe Cambridge was the best place in the world.
Oh yeah.
There we go. Turn around in the course of 20 minutes. There you go.
That is very good. So we talked about Cambridge and all that stuff, and when I had a quote in my head just then. Was it you said Paradise Lost. Just remembered this mournful gloom for that celestial light, all that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah,
it's juicy.
It's a big text.
It's a big text. Yeah, and he wrote it and he dictated it all blind. Milton was. I mean, an extraordinary thing. I mean, I should read it again now. Yeah. Maybe at the time, I just thought that Satan was such an incredible character and so flawed. And it deserves a rereading.
It does, yeah, and we've got these huge text. It's like up there with the with like Ulysses and the Odyssey and all that kind of thing, and like you go, all right, we should read these texts, but you get Ulysses and it's like a brick. Honestly, it's enormous. This thing, it's like 722 pages or something. I'm like, and you guys sit through and read all this and write essays about it, and I'm like, how? Yeah, it's a lot of words, man. It's a lot of words.
It's a lot of words. I've just finished The Brothers Karamazov, which I've not read, which is 900 pages long. And yes, there's a certain amount of pat on the back when you finish that, regardless of how much you enjoyed it or not. You go, I've done a thing there. I've read all of those pages. That's impressive.
That's intense, man. So let's jump into your work. So I want to start with Staged, I think I speak on behalf of everyone who's. I'm sure lots of people have seen it, but I think on behalf of actors, directors, or anyone in the business through that weird time we called lockdown, I think it was so refreshing to see just to have some content to watch, because again, it's ironic that when the world, I've talked about this on here before, but when the world shut down, what did everyone turn to? They turned to art. Mm-hmm. They turned to Netflix. They turned to National Theatre at Home, because I know that was launched during that time. YouTube, all these kind of things, just to help people get through, which was a very, very odd time. But we were talking before we came on. So how did the idea of Staged, where did it come from?
So I had been interested for a while in moving into television and film. I'd been a theatre director at that point in London for about 15 years or so. I think that's about right, and really wanted to give film and TV a go, and had adapted a novel at the request of a producer, Finn Glynn, that was supposed to shoot in Cambodia. And we'd written the script, we were trying to cast it up, it was all looking like it was going to happen. And then lockdown happened. And Finn and I were just, so we were in touch. We were discussing if there was anything that we could make remotely. It was a very strange thing. I mean, I was in lockdown with my sister, who's an actor. We'd both been based in London, but my parents live in the countryside, and we were like, let's just both get out of here and go there. So Lucy was there, and so Finn and I were discussing, going, is there anything is there anything we could make there? And I had been about to direct The Real Thing at Chichester, and Dan Evans, who was the artistic director there and is now the artistic director of the Royal Shakespeare Company, when there were rumours of lockdown happening, asked me if I would be prepared to have a week or so rehearsals with my leading actors on video call. Mm. That never happened. That never came to pass. But I mentioned this to Finn in passing, and he, genius that he is, sort of saw the potential in that. And Finn knew David Tennant from, they'd made a film together. And we knew at that point that it should be a sort of odd couple thing, or some sort of double act thing. Yeah. So we wrote like a paragraph, which was just, and we knew that if they needed a sort of foil, the two of them together needed someone that they could sort of shit on from a height. So we went to David and went, the pitch is sort of a hapless director tries to sort of marshal his two A-list stars through rehearsals via video call during lockdown in a hope of having a show ready when lockdown ends. And David was like, he said, that sounds interesting. And he took it to Michael, which we'd hoped he would do because we thought they were so good together in Good Omens.
Yes.
So he took that to them. And so then I wrote a pilot episode, which we took to them and they liked. And we shot that first episode, which was, chaotic. It was amazing to have something to focus on in that early time. And it was great to feel like you had a purpose, I think. Lots of people I know had their mental breakdowns sort of at the beginning of lockdown, I think, when they were sort of suddenly without it, whereas I pushed mine back a few months by having something immediately to do, which was quite helpful. And so we shot that first one, and that involved all the chaos of how do you make this thing? Like what software do we use? How do we record sound? Who do we have to play with? What's our cast? It's me and Lucy. It's David and Michael and their partners, and in David's case, wife, are actors as well. So we've got them. Great. How do we edit it? How do we collate all the footage at the end of shooting? All of this stuff. So the first episode took us about 6 weeks to shoot.
Wow.
and to edit and to sort of get that thing ready, with an amazing Alex Baranowski, who's an incredible composer, Dan Gage, who's an amazing editor, and we sort of all worked together, all under the agreement with David and Michael that if we made this thing and looked at it at the end and went, oh God, it's awful, that we would just bin it and never mention it again, and all it would have been is a thing that kept us busy for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And so we managed to get that first episode done, and then we showed it to the BBC, and the BBC said, we'll have it. And what we want is 6 episodes. Like, great. And they said at that moment, the idea was that lockdown might end another 6 weeks on from that point. So having taken 6 weeks to make one, what they wanted was for the show to go out before lockdown ended. So having had 6 weeks to make one, we then had 6 weeks to make another 5, which was,
intense.
Intense. Yeah. But we sort of managed it, and it became a real engine. And it was, there were days when I remember one day specifically when I was shooting episode 3, writing episode 4, and watching an edit of episode 2 all in the same sort of day. And that was,
bloody hell.
It was mad. But I think, I'd written one play with a friend of mine, David Owler, about magic called The Vanishing Man, and a sequel, The Extinction Event. I'd done those a couple of years before, but I hadn't really written. And I think perhaps the pace of it and the urgency of it helped contain any fear and insecurity I would have. Like, there wasn't time to be worried about whether it was good or not. You just sort of had to write it, send it to David and Michael, and go, we're filming this afternoon. Here we go. And of course, with actors as good as them, anything you write is sort of elevated by 100, 200% immediately. But it was an extraordinary experience, and such a unique opportunity. And I'm so proud of everybody involved that we managed to respond. That's the thing about making theatre and being creative and being in our industry. I think we all get very good at being nimble, being light on our feet and going, what can we do now and how do we make this work? And we tend to be, not always, but a lot of us tend to be yes people. We're sort of, if there's a way of doing this, let's do it. Let's try. And I was very proud at that moment, while bigger organizations and bigger institutions were trying to get stuff made, we just sort of danced slightly between the raindrops and sort of got something out there, which I'm really proud of. Yeah.
Yeah, it really was a refreshing thing, and just think about that. There, you said 6 weeks, and of course these episodes are like 15, 20 minutes long. Is that they're like a little snapshot into the lives of David and Mike. Well, they're called David and Michael in the show, but a different version of David and Michael and Simon's life during this weird time. But you think 20 minutes, but that's 6 weeks work in 15 minutes. And I think And also, I think that's something to say that some people say that when you're on a big film, it's like you shoot, what is it, like 9 seconds of a film a day or something like that, or up to 10 seconds. And you think to yourself, oh, that can't be possible. I mean, look at all these shots. It probably just got people together, took a few shots there, we fixed it in the edit, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, but what that process of like 6 weeks, I imagine you start with writing, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I imagine you start with writing, you get the script, and you send it to David, send it to Michael, then you get it reworked, then you film it, and then you have to go into an editing booth. And I think, was the fact that lockdown, because it was very much a thing at the time, was that also a bit of a stumbling point as well? Like, did it stop you from going to studios? Did it stop you from going to places? He said, oh, we need to go to that studio. Oh, no, you're not allowed. Was that
yeah, I mean, we the first series, we like the first 2 series we'd never met. Like we had a strange thing where David had sort of had us all around to his house after we'd finished, after the second series had come out and lockdown had lifted enough that we were allowed to. It was the first time we'd met each other. Like I never met the editor. I'd never met David and Michael through that whole experience. I'd never left the house, other than, a run or exercise. Like the show was made completely in our own little isolated bubbles. That's what I mean. Like there was a challenge of, I think we had to get a new laptop to Michael. Did we have to do that? We certainly had to get a new laptop to somebody, maybe one of the guest stars. We had to sort of ship that there. I had to get a new phone at mine. So that stuff was sent. And then it was about using a little program on the computers that would record the feed from the cameras on people's laptops. Then I would have to talk David and Michael through how they shared that footage with me remotely, so that I could sort of review rushes and send notes on those to my editor, again, digitally. Then he and I would get on a Zoom call with, him on here to talk to, but also the sort of rough edit in another window to watch that. It was all that.
Bonkers.
Which was very strange. And you forget, well, 2 things. First thing is, to the time that it took, yes, all of that was an obstacle. The other obstacle was that certainly David and Michael were also fathers at home and were homeschooling and were all the rest of it. I mean, this wasn't a conventional film shoot even in terms of, right, well, we will be together from 10 in the morning until 6 in the evening and film this. This was, okay, what are your responsibilities today? Can I get half an hour with you two today? And if so, okay, let's do this little chunk here. And there are some episodes, we got a bit more ambitious as we went along, and some of the episodes were all in real time. So it was like seasons 2 and 3, because we were then making it for BBC, but we knew we'd pre-sold it to people who wanted a sort of broadcast half hour. So the episodes got longer in 2 and 3. And some of those episodes cover a sort of half-hour window of time, but we will have shot that over God knows how many different days in little weird chunks that poor Dan, our editor, had to stitch together. And there was one where it's the second episode in series 3, which is all in real time, and there's a farce, effectively, that the Simon character is at the center of.
Yeah.
And because of everyone's availability, I had to film my bits at completely different times with them all. So my background kept changing. So at the end of it, I had to re-record all of my bits without anybody else on.
Oh my God.
Just in my own room. So my poor wife was downstairs just hearing me rabbiting away to myself upstairs like a complete madman, trying to get all this stuff so that we could stitch it all together. It was insane.
Wow.
But again, a real sense of, we can, so let's try. And David and Michael were extraordinary, and with exactly that same spirit of, here's the script, we're going to shoot this afternoon, and we get on the call and they're both word perfect, they've learned it, we're ready to go, capitalize on time. And it meant that we could be current, I think, which is a tough thing to do in TV and film, because it usually takes such a long time to make that stuff, that although a piece of work can be made which purports to respond to the moment, but what it tends to be responding to is a moment from a year ago, or whatever state the world is in, if it is still in that state now. Whereas we were able to, it was an amazing thing to go, this is what is the current frustration with Zoom, for example. I will put that in an episode and that will be on the BBC in 3 days. And that's a rare opportunity.
Yeah. Is it? You could always be classed as key workers during that time.
I wouldn't take that away from the actual key workers, but it was certainly nice to feel that, and it was really lovely to put a bit of work out into the world, and then exactly as you say, I mean, I know a lot of people in our industry, and it was lovely to get emails and texts from people saying exactly what you've said, that it felt like it was a nice thing for them to have, that there was a sort of comfort to it, which was just lovely.
Yeah. Funny enough, it found me at a bit of a very convenient time, because that was released sort of early 2021, wasn't it? And
no, mid 2020, the first series, and then series 2, January 21.
Okay, yeah. So I found it just after series 2 came out. Then I sort of went back and started from there. So, I went to drama school at the time. I got in over lockdown, and they said, right, well, come and join us in January of 2021, because by that point we should be in the clear. And of course we were not. So we got there, and it was all Zoom. And anyway, long story short, I deferred. I went back in October of 21, and I had a brilliant year, but there was no more Zoom. We were all in the room. It was, that cloud of COVID had passed, thankfully. And but when I came back and I found your show and I started from the beginning, it was like, yeah, this is totally relatable, because I was doing this last week. I was trying to do Shakespeare and Laban classes on Zoom, which, by the way, I do not recommend at all, guys. If you have to do online rehearsals because someone's in another country or whatever, it's like it's fine up to a point. And I think also it showed you, like, this is where, not only from a acting perspective where the industry was, but where the world was, of course, at the time, because you had those lovely panoramic shots of the countryside, and you had Leicester Square and Piccadilly Circus, and then it was so bizarre just remembering that time and seeing all those places that were completely empty, when usually you cannot move in Piccadilly Circus or Leicester Square because it's just, there's people everywhere. But yeah, no, you really did tap into something very, very real and very, very current at the time. It was refreshing to see and be like, oh, right, yeah, this is great.
Well, that's lovely to hear. I mean, yeah, we had a friend of mine, guy called Oliver Kember, who was based in London and is a sort of DOP. He's a director as well, but does a lot of cinematography. And when you were allowed to sort of go out and do your bit of exercise, he cycled to Leicester Square, stuff like that, with his camera, and sort of got us a load of B-roll footage of those places. And then the BBC gave us access to their archives as well to get all of that sort of stuff. And it was all, I mean, it was a strange thing. And Finn and I decided very early on that we wouldn't mention COVID in the series. Like, that word never appears. Neither does the word pandemic. No, it does. Samuel L.Jackson, of all people, says pandemic once, but virus isn't mentioned. We sort of wanted it to be about two people who are forced to use video calls to have their conversations and to be in lockdown, but we wanted to be very careful about how we commented on the time we were in. I remember that ITV brought out something called Lockdown Stories, I think, which got out just before we did, and was quite it was beautiful work, but it was quite serious, and it was a real sort of, God, isn't this time difficult? Yeah. And I remember watching it going, I don't want this now. Yeah. This is not, I know the world's difficult. I would rather something be escapist. So we were trying to tread, I think, quite a fine line of going, we recognize this stuff. And there's the plot line in series 1 of Michael's Neighbour that was as close as we ever got to the impact of this. But we wanted to be very careful about because we wanted it to be funny. We wanted people to laugh at it. And if we get too close to
like the serious stuff, then
we're going to be in trouble.
And of course we needed a laugh at that point as well, and I know I was very lucky. My experience of lockdown was very good. I actually had a really good time. We made the most of it, and I'm sure you, Lucy, and your family probably did the same, because you worked through it as well. And you talk about the joys of just having something to do during that time as well, which was great. But I know some people had bad experiences as well, and I shouldn't rule that out. And the key workers and everything that they did during that time, I take my hat off to all of them. So definitely want to preface that and say, everyone's experience of lockdown was very, very different. And I think it was great that I have to say the very first episode is one of my favorites, when particularly in the moment towards the end where they're deciding which character's name goes on the poster. It's like so Sheen comes before Tennant, or David comes before Michael. Have you got a middle name? Yeah. What is it? John Christopher. Christopher, fuck off.
Well, that came absolutely from reality, because we were like, how do we, with actual David and Michael, how do we do this? And then, yeah, Finn and I sort of went, well, that's the gag, isn't it? Like, if we can find a way that in every episode they're a different way round. And Dan Gage had the brilliant idea then of, at the beginning of every episode, they use the names that were mentioned in the last episode, and whichever way around they go, it's that way around, with like David the liar Tennant, I think, or David that fucking liar Tennant, or something like that. Comes up in some later episode, and then having Judi Dench at the end to sort of give a final ruling on that sort of stuff. It felt like a very satisfying
we're actors. We do the fucking job.
Yeah.
No, but you got some amazing names. How did you get those two, Samuel L. Jackson and Judi Dench? I mean, that's incredible.
We just asked them. I mean, you forget, don't you, that everyone was in lockdown. I mean, I think even when we were trying to put that cast together, I probably had some weird idea in my head that went, yeah, but famous people are exempt from this, aren't they? Like, famous people are getting on with their life. But no, everyone was just sitting around looking for something to do. And certainly once we'd made that first episode, so we had a proof of concept. And obviously to have David and Michael in it is such a sort of stamp of approval anyway. But to be able to send the first episode to people and go, look, this is a legitimate thing, and we think a good thing, helped. But Samuel was extraordinary, because we were aware that, because the cast was me and my sister, Michael and Anna, David and Georgia, we had a very white cast, and so what we needed was, we needed an actor in episode 3 who could really belittle David and Michael and who they would be intimidated by. So we needed an actor of such stratospheric profile that even David and Michael, with their experience and profile, could be intimidated by him. And we sort of went, well, it would be nice if that was not a white actor. We'd like the cast, we want to reflect the world a bit more. And it was Michael who went, well, you should just ask Samuel L. Jackson. And he said that, I remember, on a video call, and you go, sort of Finn and I both sort of nodding and humouring Michael, going, yes, yeah, of course. But he was absolutely right, and Michael had worked with him once before, so we did, and he said yes. And then Judi, again, we needed somebody at the end of that who, again, I'd written that role into episode 6, and I just called that role God. When just God appears and just sort of resolves in a sort of Deus Ex Machina thing, just sort of resolves the issue with David and Michael. And we were all like, who could this be? And we all just went, well, it has to be, doesn't it? If it's a show about theatre and it's a British comedy show, it sort of has to be her. But I still remember there was a day when her agent reached out. We put the offer in. Her agent reached out to us and said, Dame Judi would like to speak to Simon. And that was a sort of terrifying thing. And you go, okay, God, am I going to be selling this to Judi Dench? And she phoned me, and the first thing she said was, I understand we're going to be working together. And he went, oh, good, oh, great. So this is not a sales pitch. This is you're on, and you just want to talk about how it all works. And she was just extraordinary. And then for series 2, like, because the first series had gone down well, everybody wanted to sort of be a part of series 2. Like, series 2, I won't say it was easy. Finn did an incredible job of sort of wrangling actors, but we certainly had some real wind behind our sails and some real goodwill about the show. So people were keen to get involved. Yeah.
And you had some amazing people like Hugh Bonneville and Jim Parsons, and you had some, and of course, and also I think all of us were. One thing I always thought, that was when I started this show, we were in lockdown, I think, at the time. So April 2021 was my first episode, so we were in the crux of it at the time. But a small part of me was like, why couldn't it start during the first one? Because we had all these people just at home, and I could just emailed any actor who I'd love to speak to, but all in good time, and just gone, hey, do you want to having a chat for a couple of hours about some work that you've done? I'm sure. And it's just the power of people always go, how did you get them? They're so difficult. How'd you do it? I asked them.
That's
it. That's all I did. You know.
But it's a sort of thing to remember in terms of people's career in this industry as well. I mean, I think there is a degree of gatekeeping that happens in this industry, and I've had a very I have a very complicated relationship with the industry in terms of times I've really loved it, and other times I've really not enjoyed being a part of it as well.
Sure.
But all of that is helped by having an attitude of just try to do the thing and just ask for the thing or try to make the thing happen, and nobody is going to be an ambassador for you except you. So knock on people's doors, ask for things. Nobody in the history of the universe has ever minded getting an email saying, I really like you and what you do. What about this? Like, that doesn't anger people.
No.
That's always it's always worth the shot. And yeah, Staged was absolutely that. Staged was a whole gesture of why not? Why don't we just ask? Why don't we just try and do this? And yes, it was always lovely to have people come back and go yes. And then to have, what was really nice was that then after I was asked to direct an event for the Donmar warehouse when we were out of lockdown again, and we wanted to get lots of videos from people. If people couldn't come and be at the Donmar for it, we wanted them to send in video messages. And quite a few people, hearing I was directing it, said, could they do that with me rather than just sending a video call? Could they get on Zoom with me, and could I sort of direct them and do the thing properly? And they'd all seen the show, and I remember, Jude Law of all people being like, Simon, because I'd worked with him a long time ago. So I said, can I hang out with him? Can I see him? And we'll do it that way. And it just, it seemed to infiltrate in some really exciting ways, and really proud of it.
Yeah. Oh, you should be, man. Absolutely. And I think. Just like I say, so many people, I think it was, we needed a laugh, and also we need someone, and another way of saying that, look, you're not alone in this. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from or where you've been, what you've done. We're all going through this as a collective, and I think it was a real breath of fresh air as well as a really good laugh as well for everyone. So, and it's amazing that what you can do with just life, and anything can become something. And congrats again, man. You're such a really, really good work. And
thank you.
Yeah, and also you got to be an actor in it as well.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Originally, Lucy was going to be the director character. That was the idea that we had, so that I could just focus on the writing and the directing side of it. And then we realized that they just couldn't be as mean to Lucy as they could be to me. I think some young woman wanting to make it as a theatre director, it's slightly less funny when two high-profile male actors just are rude to her. So we sort of went, okay, it needs to be me, and that's terrifying, right? This is then returns to Michael Sheen, and I'm going to try and act with those guys. And thankfully, because I was writing it, I think I was able to write to whatever meager skill set I have. Like, let's if we write him like this, I can probably just about do this. And David and Michael were brilliant. And look, no acting is required to when you write a line for Michael Sheen where he looks me dead in the eyes and says, I don't like you, Simon, I find you Weasley. Then no acting is required from me to just sort of wilt like a lettuce leaf in front of him.
You just go, fucking hell, yeah.
Great, yeah. I'll buy that.
Yeah. So when he looks down the camera, goes, "Why do you want to do this, Simon?"
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
And you go,
freeze. Yep.
And you freeze and lose your connection. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Mate, honestly, congrats on that one.
Thank you.
And then sort of secondly today, I want to bring on to something that's currently, talking of current events, you're currently at the Noel Coward Theatre with your recent revival of Cyrano de Bergerac, or Cyrano de Bergerac, potato. I was lucky enough to see it a couple of weeks ago. And it's just brilliant, mate. It's absolutely brilliant. What you and you've also co-adapted it with Debris Stevenson as well, and it's a brilliant brilliant retelling of such a classic story, man. I mean, and like I said, we were talking before we came on. I saw James McAvoy do it just before. That was the last thing I saw actually before lockdown, funny enough. And I thought James played it very well, but I feel like his Cyrano was very guarded. He had a lot of steel, a lot of armor around him. And like the second an emotion came out, when he's the scene where he's actually writing the letter and saying all these beautiful words, it's always like the second that was over, it was like, shtoom, like, okay, seal back up. I don't want to talk about this anymore. But Adrian had, his heart was on his sleeve the whole time. He just absolutely just poured his emotion out and his excitement and his cartwheels and everything on stage at any one time. So was that part, I mean, well, actually, we'll get on to that in a second, but so why did you want to, you and Debris, why did you want to do Cyrano de Bergerac? Why go back to that text specifically?
So there's two things. So I directed Cyrano back on the Fringe. What I mentioned earlier, we sort of talked about a few things that I'd done on the Fringe.
Nice.
At the beginning of my career, I did Cyrano at the White Bear Theatre in Kennington about 16 years ago now. Yeah, that long. Yeah. And I adore that play, and I read it years and years ago. I read the Anthony Burgess translation, and it broke my heart, and it surprised me, and it moved me, and I'd always wanted to have a go at it. So did the Ranjit Bolt version, which is what I did at the White Bear Theatre, and I'd always wanted to come back to it. You know, you do something on the Fringe, a play of that scale, and you always hope that you might get a chance to revisit it. And then over the years, so Adrian and I started talking about it about 8 or 9 years ago. He came to see Arturo Ui that I did at the Donmar, and we started talking about working together on something after that. And Cyrano was something I mentioned to him, and he got excited about it. Then the James McAvoy version came along and made enough of a splash that we sort of went, right, that title's probably not touchable for a little while in a sort of commercial way. And then lockdown happened, so that sort of kept getting pushed back. And then the time we've come to it now, I mean, there's two things that why I wanted to do it. The first thing is a sort of personal one, which is the sort of journey I've been on through life has made me very interested in insecurity and in the dishonesty that comes around that, and sort of feelings of being enough. I think the play appealed to me 15 years ago for the opportunities it had for amazing staging and the comedy and the tragedy, whereas now it's a much more personal, I get that, and I get that sadness, and I get what words mean as a sort of form of armor for somebody, and I get the idea of being performative and masking your own emotions with those sorts of things. And the second thing is that I feel like we've become a little saturated with films and theatre that is just so knowing and so ironic and so sort of snarky, maybe. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Marvel universe, but they've sort of given culture in general this sort of winking, don't care about this too much because we're going to undercut it in a second. And I think that's bled into everything, where it feels like, for whatever reason, well, I have a hypothesis, but that we're quite afraid of opening our hearts, and we're quite afraid of feeling too much. And theatre, I think, is a culprit of that as well. Theatre is increasingly becoming, I think, afraid to really ask its audience to feel something. Musicals still do it in a big way, but theatre in general, I think sometimes, if we're theatre makers, we've all got a degree of ego and arrogance about the intellectualness of our work. And sometimes I think that means that people go, I don't want people to feel something. I want them to think about something. I want them to go away with their, with a new idea or a new take on something. And I want to have really played with their mind. And there's an absence of stuff that goes, well, what about your heart? And I became very interested in work that was not sentimental, but that was really sincere in its objective, which was, I want you to have a feeling experience first. And of course, I want you to leave and to have something to discuss with people. I want there to be enough brain matter in there. But primarily, I want you to feel something. And Cyrano as a play is such an invocation for that, right? It covers so much ground. And that ground is funny and surprising and dangerous and tragic and all of those things together. I can't think of another play really which has quite as much as that. Maybe something like A Winter's Tale that has such comedic moments and then heartbreak and see, you know, Act 4 is Cyrano is all on a battlefield, and each of those things asks an audience to feel something different and ultimately moves them to a place where they can hopefully feel a huge amount. And so the play seems to offer that to me at a time when that was all I really wanted to do. And so that was just great.
Yeah.
And then there's to the debris of it all, when Adrian and I had first started talking, there'd been another translation which we've been discussing using, and then Staged happened, and I became much more interested in writing. And so then when we came out of lockdown and started the discussions with the RSC, we sort of had a bit of a change of pace, and the RSC as well was sort of interested in me doing it. And so we sort of had that conversation about my translating it. But while I realized that I was very confident in the characterization, the dialogue, there was lots of dramaturgical changes I wanted to make, things like the band, bringing them in, the boy, all of that sort of stuff. I had all of that in my head, but I was worried that I wouldn't be able to deliver on the poetry side of it, which is obviously a sort of key element of it. And I thought it would be such a shame if we do all of this hard work, and then in those moments where Cyrano really needs to let fly and sort of soar with his words, it's a little bit unsatisfying because I've done it. So I went to the RSC and said, let's see if we can find a poet who has some experience in theatre as well. And I met a few people. Adrian and I together met a few people, and Debris was just a standout. She was just so excited, got what we wanted to do. And so she and I, put our heads together and yeah.
And I thought,
worked it out.
yeah, no, I'd love to talk to her about it as well. And I've looked her up, and she's a poet, like you just said there as well, and she also acts as well. So big shout out to Debris as well. And I feel like with this one, and I mentioned what we talked about before, it was almost like in the West End, like you have this like this thing of like obviously we know there isn't a fourth wall there literally, but I feel like with a lot of productions that I've seen, there is a fourth wall. There's very much you sit there and just observe, and we do our thing and stuff like that. But with this one, it almost felt like an experience of the Globe, because you actively engaged your audience, which I thought was a brilliant touch. The audience felt like they were part of the journey, they were part of the language, they were part of the poetry, and part of just Cyrano's journey, just to be able to say, sorry, spoiler alert, that all he wants to say to the love of his life is, "I love you." And and it just reminded me that he knows. And by the way, the sequence at the end where he just used the word "be" and he just went every single word beginning with "be" and everything, mate. That was such a clever touch, man. Honestly, that's so good. And
I'm very, very proud of that, because we did so in the original play. There is no Roxanne and Cyrano don't have a big catch up, or they do have when they first meet in Act 2. They don't have a lot of conversation before she starts to talk about Christian. And then in Act 5, they have this moment where Cyrano arrives and just gives her the sort of news from Paris, because she's not leaving her house anymore, so he brings her news. And so I wrote this S game for them at the beginning of Act 2. And it's one of those lovely things where you sort of pat yourself on the back. I wrote the S game that they have where they just talk in S's back and forth.
Yeah.
And then it got to Act 5 and I was adapting that, and the moment where Cyrano arrives to give her the news, and you go, oh God, he can do this now, can't he? He can play that game again, and he can just give her B's, and that felt just one of those nice things where you go, oh, look how that all ties together. But yeah, I mean, the audience stuff, and sorry, I interrupted you.
I don't know. No, carry on.
Yeah, I mean, look, some of that is the magic, right? And also I spent quite a lot of time, I worked with Secret Cinema for a bit of time, did some shows for them. Like, I've always been really interested in how you activate an audience in theatre. And I think you're right that along with that irony, there's an increasing move towards theatre as television, theatre that is being made in the same way that television, like with which I mean by having that wall in, that theatre that doesn't care whether the audience is there or not, which I think is really sad. Like,
it is, yeah.
Theatre is one of the as religion becomes sort of less of a draw for people in certainly in our part of the world, and music becomes more digital. like those opportunities to be together with people and to have a communal experience are becoming rarer and rarer. I mean, you think about sports matches still do it, concerts do occasionally, but those moments where we all get together and feel something. I mean, I love the cinema, I love movies, but you watch a movie in isolation, right? The lights go down, you sit there, you forget everyone else is around, you just get lost in it. Theatre can do something very different. Theatre can suddenly make you aware that there are other people feeling the same as you are, and that's hugely powerful. I mean, I remember the first show of Cyrano and the Swan last year, and just realizing that it had, I mean, we had loads of work to do, but sort of going, oh, it's working. Like people are upset, are crying, or they're in tears at the end, and they are in tears with each other. And I remember the audience leaving after that, and a few people just sort of staying, just sort of sitting there for a little while. And I remember an usher who had been crying, going over and helping a woman out of her seat who had been crying. And you go, this feels rare and really special. And that theatre should do that. Theatre should, I mean, we can go back anthropologically and go, you know, there's arguments that theatre is a sort of extension of an idea of human sacrifice, and that we watch characters on stage go through these things so that we can have that cathartic experience as well. We can feel those things safely. Be allowed to feel. And I think part of that is really helped by going, God, everybody else is laughing around me, or everybody else is crying around me. And that's pretty magical and pretty special. So I think, there's lots of moments through the show that just remind the audience that they're there and that we can see them and that they're a part of this as well. And that's bringing actors in through the auditorium. That's little moments where Adrian can directly address them. There's all those little things that just try to go, all the band in the boxes, things like that, all those little touches that go, we see you and you're here with us in this. And you're allowed to feel something, and that's not dangerous. That's comforting.
100%. And I think I remember I was very lucky to interview one of my heroes a couple of years ago, someone called I don't know if you've crossed paths with her at all, Yao Farber, you know. I don't know if you know. I met her a couple of times at the Donmar, but no, not in a professional sense.
Okay,
Yao was I can't speak highly of her enough. Just I've seen her crucible on digital theatre an unhealthy amount of times because, and I know people probably who know the play, that's a dark play, Ollie. How can you sit through it so many times? But yes, it is a dark play. But what she did with it just made me want to go back and just watch it again and again and again and again and again. And I mentioned that because, just going off what you said there, in our conversation, which funny enough I was listening back to a couple of days ago, she talked about how theatre is a ritual. And I said, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, because like you mentioned, she mentioned the history, you know, it's mentioned the Greeks, like Dionysus and all these things. You get together and you are sharing a common theme or several themes and several emotions all in one time. And that's what theatre is all about. So therefore it is a ritual. And I thought, that's quite a nice way of looking at it. And just, And also I think you mentioned there, I mentioned to you before, but it felt like the globe in some experiences because people were actively getting involved. Because, and of course you had, I won't say too much because I want people to go and see the play. I'm not going to spoil any surprises for them, but you feel genuinely involved in that. And then that makes the language and everything much more. And also I think it just goes back to the thing is, if someone acknowledges you and say, we see you, we hear you, we know you're in this building with us for the next 2.5, 3 hours or however long it was, and we want you to come on this journey with us, you actively get more attention. You're like, okay, well, let's see what you got, guys. Let's see what's going on. Because there's nothing worse of going to a play and you feel like you're completely disconnected from it. It's not very good. And then, you get that awkward sign where someone looks at their watch or someone checks their phone and you're going, okay, we've lost our crowd, I think. But that was not the case at all with this. And
Well, that's good. I mean, that's absolutely right with that ritual thing. And that the thing I relate to is there's a phrase, it's Seneca, which is an Irish storyteller. And I did St. Nicholas for the Donmar, which is a Conor McPherson one-man show that Brendan Coyle did for me, and that was just it's an amazing one-person show about a theatre critic who meets a coven of vampires in London,
Yeah.
And at one point in the story, late on, he mentions that there's a superstition around vampires that if you put rice on the window, they can't get in.
Yeah.
We love that, Brendan and I. And so at the
Or
beginning of
garlic on the door or something.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at the beginning of the show, he's sort of sitting there as the audience come in. He's sitting at this big desk with his back to the audience, and he turns and he looks at them all. And then he stood up and he reached his hand in his pocket and he brought out a handful of rice and he drew this huge circle around the stage with this rice that became his sort of Seneca story circle. And you just felt people just lean forward a little bit, and you just go, yeah, there's something deeply ingrained in this that goes, we are all part of this ritual now. And I think that's really important. I had quite a run of shows that I was sort of determined that should start dramatically. That sort of I did Killer Joe, like it started with a crash of lightning and the light suddenly snapped to black, and like I've done that work that's quite confrontational, and with Cyrano, I'm sort of aware at the moment that people are moving through the world, I think, quite scared and angry. And I think people come to the theatre like they come to everything at the moment, adrenalized, sort of shot through with cortisol. I was late, the tube didn't work, it's too hot, I haven't managed to eat, haven't managed to use the loo, what are we doing? And they sit down in these seats. And what I wanted was, in the sort of ritual of it, for the show to just calm everybody down. And that's why we mentioned before Christian Patterson, who plays Ragueneau in this. And we've written this, it's not in the original, this sort of strange opening where he gets up on the stage and he talks to the audience and he goes, I'm allowed to be up here. And these are precious moments. Us, the world loud outside, us quiet in here. And then this sort of poem starts, the music starts, and the show starts. And that's all ritual. That's all going, can you try and leave your cares outside a little bit? Because for Cyrano to work as a play over the course of whatever it is, 2 hours, 45 minutes, it needs to cast a spell on you. And that spell is quite fragile. And so you're looking always for what could break that spell. And what do we need to do to hold it and to hold people in that place so that at the end, their hearts are just completely open. And that's the challenge, right? Yes, you talk about people on their phones. That's one thing. I also see people with their arms folded. People back in their seats.
Like negative body language. Yeah.
All of that, which I get. I mean, God, I see a lot of, well, actually, I don't see so much anymore, but I have seen a lot of theatre in my life, and I've seen a lot of bad theatre in my life. And I don't blame anybody for going, I wish I'd actually rather gone to the pub or done something else. And I'm sitting back and I'm a little bit bored by this. But what your production is trying to do is go, just unfold your arms and just lean in closer. And some of that is helped by an actor looking directly at you, going, I see you. Be engaged, be a part of this. You need to find the right actors to do that. And we did that a lot with Arturo at Donmar, a lot of using the audience in fun ways. But I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by how you energize and activate that crowd so that they feel connected to each other, connected to what's happening on stage, present in that moment. Yeah, I mean, the magician in me goes, for one night, I have whatever it is, an Noel Coward, 900 people to play with. Let's play with them a little bit.
Let's enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah. God, yeah.
Yeah. Now, this is going to be a very, very silly question now, and something you've probably been asked 100 times since this first launch at the RSC. But some productions of this don't have the obvious nose on it. What made you want to go with the prosthetic nose for Adrian and make it really show it?
I think there's a few things. We had this conversation. We also had the conversation about whether we wanted the nose to be more extended. I mean, there's all sorts of things there, which is Adrian and I had to. Adrian is, I think, as far as we can tell, the first really high-profile non-white actor to play the role.
Wow.
I'm sure there's productions that I haven't found, and there's been gender-flipped versions.
Yeah.
But we were sort of aware that there is a version, and Adrian and I had this conversation early. We sort of went, there is a version of this play where Cyrano's blackness is his nose. by which I mean his otherness in the world, or his sense of discomfort and lack of inclusion, is because of his blackness. And I sort of had to chat with Adrian and go, if that's the production you want to do, I'm probably not the person to direct you in that, or to write that one. And Adrian didn't want to do that at all. He wanted it to be a sort of more universal story.
Yeah.
So there's an idea that, yes, if you don't give Adrian a nose, you risk people reading that into it, even with a cast as diverse as ours. You risk that being a reading of the play. Then also, I think if you don't, well, there's a realistic thing which I sometimes stumble on with those productions. If there's no nose, and you're asking an audience to believe that this otherwise very handsome person without the nose doesn't feel able to talk to this woman, and I stumble a little bit on that, not hugely, but a little bit. And then I think also the nose offers a really helpful avatar for people's own insecurities. Like, we've all got a Cyrano's nose, I think.
Yeah.
And there's something about, by giving people that familiarity with it, and by that not being a different choice, people are oddly able to read better into it their own circumstance, their own situation. Like, any statement we made on that, other than to do what it was, I think makes the production about that statement. To do what is expected with that, or to do what is a slightly more conventional thing, I think allows people to sort of forget about that. But within that as well, there was a conversation about how big we wanted it or small we wanted it to be. And we also wanted the language in there to be, yes, you do have a nose, but that doesn't matter. And I think I love that every time Cyrano tells anybody, or it is brought out of him that he loves her, that the person who he's with always says, well, just tell her. And he always goes, no, I can't because of this. And they go, she wouldn't care. She's sort of fine. And I think you lose some of that if there's no nose there. And there needs to be a thing that he has a relationship with, that everybody else goes, it's not a big deal. And as soon as there's nothing there, that argument becomes less satisfying for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. And I think also, like, when you have the visual representation, I think that's just sort of hits it a bit further in some ways. And of course, don't get me wrong, I know James McAvoy didn't have a nose, he just played it as himself, and I think everyone who knows the story, that you can kind of use your imagination to kind of do that. And it's a bit like the scene in the Scottish play, well, there's two scenes where it's like, do you see the dagger, do you have the dagger, or do you see Banquo at the table? And I know some people do, which I prefer, to be honest, but and some people don't. I know Anthony Sher, the late great Anthony Sher, did a film version of it where he just went completely mad at an empty chair. And don't get me wrong, that was terrifying. That was terrifying to watch. But in this case, you see this and people go, oh, she's not going to love me because of this. And it's like, like you say, we all have something. We all have a Cyrano's nose, but it could be something different entirely. And it's interesting because a lot of the time people go, so no, A, no one sees that, only you, and B, no one cares. So
completely.
Yeah.
There's also something about, and this comes back to the point about cortisol and adrenaline and how people are coming to the theatre at the moment. I feel in myself a slight rejection of hyper-modernized productions, sort of loud, hyper-violent productions of classic plays. Anything like what I hope we've done with Cyrano it is to the point earlier, is a magic trick, which goes, you sit down and you go, oh, it feels to begin with like I'm watching something old-fashioned. Old-fashioned is safe. Old-fashioned won't hurt me. Old-fashioned won't demand something different of me, won't confront me with something too ugly or unpleasant. Won't force me to reckon with something. And so you open your heart a little bit and you relax a little bit. And I'm aware that if I go to a show and it starts in a sort of angular, jagged way, or if there's a big statement in it, I just feel my brain kicking in. And this sounds like a silly thing to say, I don't want people's brains in Cyrano to be activated particularly. Like I sort of want to turn your brain off a bit. And I want you to relax into it. Okay. And I want you just to lower your defenses a bit. I don't want you to approach it like an intellectual exercise. I want you to feel. and I want you to laugh, and I want you to cry. And some of that is just going, I'm not going to, very deliberately, I'm not going to give you a big concept on this, but I hope that the language is fresh and fizzy, and that keeps you engaged. And then suddenly I'm breaking your heart at the end in a way that I go to those more modern productions sometimes that purport to be more relevant because of their modernism. And I find I feel less because my analytical brain is engaged in it. And I'm looking for the message and the metaphor.
Yeah.
And that's all juicy stuff. And theatre should have that responsibility to interrogate big ideas and should activate our brain. But that's not the purpose of this show. I hope your brain is titillated. I hope we tickle you and amuse you and all of that sort of stuff. But also, I don't want at any point somebody going, but what does it mean? I just want to go, just fucking feel it. And that feels a rarer thing at the moment.
Definitely. Yeah. And I feel like there's a core message in this piece of simplicity. Not like it's simple, but simplicity. And I feel like this is one thing that struck me when I left the theatre, which was seeing this play again. I mean, it sort of refreshed my brain about it, and it was so nice to see it from through a different lens, you know, because I know Jamie Lloyd's version was very stripped back, whereas this one had the whole set. It had color, it had the costumes, you had the nose, etc. And it was just a really lovely just to see it in its full glory again, which was just amazing. And big shout out to the guys who worked with you, who helped create the sets, the designs, the costumes, everything, and of course yourself for putting it all together. But I feel like there's, at the core of it, simple. Like, for a man who's a maestro of words, you can, again, going back to the B section towards the end, which people go and see and hear that, it's amazing. But when he's doing his cartwheels, all these big words and phrases and everything, for someone who has just an encyclopedic and brilliant way of putting words together and using them, the thing that he really wants to say is, again, we talked about this earlier, but he just wants to say, I love you. It's just 3 simple words, and yet it's funny how you can say so much with so many words, but you can say a hell of a lot more with significantly fewer.
Completely. And that's a thing that I'm really proud of in our production. That's not from the original. The original, he does say that he loves her. He's very open with that. He doesn't say it to her, but that word doesn't have the same weight for him. And like, in our version, we've invented this backstory for Roxanne. We've made her a bit older. We've made her widowed. We've made her badly treated by men in the past. Like, all of that is our invention in this, to try and give the sense of love, real weight. And that word, real weight, like, she's very cynical. Roxanne's very cynical of the word in our production. And so the idea of them both hearing it and saying it becomes hugely weighty. And then, I remember when I was talking to Debris, and so the way we worked on the script was I would do a sort of pass of the whole thing and then would send it to her with certain bits highlighted that went, can you look at this? Then she'd look at those bits and tweak some other bits, and we'd sort of ping it back and forth. And in the first version, for the end of the play, I copied in, just as a reference, the ending of a brilliant play called Tom Paine Based on Nothing by an American writer called Will Eno, which is sort of about language and about our ability to communicate. In his case, yes, a sort of heartbreak. And the end is this sort of word vomit. It's this sort of stream of consciousness of words that ultimately sort of breaks down into a sort of scream. And I sort of included that. And I don't know why I'm including this, except to say that it feels like language needs to desert him at the end in some way. And that's not the original. In the original, he maintains his linguistic flamboyance until the very end. Roxanne learns that he loves her. They sort of say that they love each other, and then he senses death coming, and he stands up and has this amazing heroic speech, which is in defiance of all of the things he's always been defiant of, and sort of has the last word and ends heroically. And I went, that feels wrong for what we want to do with this. And yes, and then with the breakdown of language conversation that we started then having with Adrian, and it became a really wonderful Debris, Adrian conversation about, okay, how does this language break down? Where do we script that for Adrian? Where does he sort of improvise around sort of a map of words that we've given him? And then the conversation came about, yes, does he ever say I love you to him? And I went, no, never. I never want to hear him say it. I never do. And people have got quite, in a nice way, like my aunt came to see it, I remember, and afterwards she was like, why did you not let him say it? Because I think that would be disappointing. I don't know. I would much rather the audience imagine what that might have been like. I don't know how the reality of him, because they're three such simple words, even with someone as amazing as Adrian, I don't know what saying that would mean at the end of the play. But the moment that always breaks me a little bit is when he nearly says it at the very end after his, spoiler, sort of died, and the boy holds out his hand to him just before he's going to say it. And I remember staging that the first time and going, "Oh yeah, that's good. I like that. That's some nice work, Simon. Well done." Yeah.
I was that ending especially was very beautiful. That was and it's I mean, you can see why it's a classic and everything, but and I suppose when anyone asks, because he's such an iconic character, and of course you've worked with Adrian on it, you found your own interpretations of it in the West End, of course, the RSC. So who is Cyrano to you, Simon?
He's someone who has been hurt by the world, or chooses to believe that he's been hurt by the world, and has therefore developed his ways of existing, which is to be antagonistic with the world in response, which is where I sort of relate as well, and where it has become a really personal one for me. Someone who Cyrano, I mean, I like the little subtleties that I'm very proud of, which is that he has a fight with someone called Valver at the beginning, a sort of amazing fencing match that Beth and Clark choreographed. And in our version, that fight comes. So this character Valver says he has a big nose, or words to that effect. Yeah, which is a dangerous thing to do to Cyrano, and the play establishes that. But he only says that because Cyrano really needles him and really pushes him to say it. Yeah, like he has lots of chances to leave, but Adrian keeps doing it, and I like that, because what that says to me is Cyrano is spoiling for a fight always. He thinks the world is against him, and therefore he is going to interact with the world in a hostile way. And that's where he gets scared. He gets hugely scared of vulnerability. I love what Adrian does. Whenever anybody says you're scared, you sort of see him bristle. This idea of, I'm not scared of the world, sort of fuck the world. I'll be better than the world, and I'll be better than everybody around me. And that sort of resentment and competitiveness, I think, is a really understandable thing that comes from a place where, like, we have this sort of fantasy element where you see the young Cyrano, and my idea of that is that you see him just before he realized he was different. And he talks a lot about these giants, and the giants are the sort of other kids who bullied him and picked on him because he had a big nose. And somewhere in there, he has a speech that I'm, again, very proud of at the end of Act 4, where he says, this is what words mean here, not art, but armor. And I think that's Cyrano. I'm always interested about that. And the original Rostand doesn't really talk about it much, but for someone to be that good at words, that good with words, that witty and sharp and eloquent, there has to be a reason for that, right? And I choose to believe in our production, that reason is he had to defend himself with words, and over time that defending himself became an offensive. And he said, I won't wait till I have to defend myself. I'll just attack with words straight away. And yeah, he's a little boy. He's terrified of the world, but by words he can seem to control it for a time. And then I think it's even more tragic when at the end, at a moment where it is most important that he says something, he realizes how many words he has wasted to get to there. That's what it means to me, I think.
Yeah, hugely. Yeah, that's brilliant. And also it's like his coping mechanism, isn't it?
Yeah, completely.
To sort of be like, yeah, I suppose. And also, when you're with it again with the RSC, and then you moved it to the West End now. I mean, are you still making changes? Are you still discovering new things about the play, or is it kind of in a place where you can just sort of take a step back and go, it's all right, I think we've got it in a decent spot now, we don't need to do anything else? Or is that director brain of yours always going, okay, can we make that clearer? Can we do that differently? Is that the case even now?
Yeah, that part of the brain is certainly activated, and like there was enough of the RSC production was in the Swan Theatre, which is a thrust space and a bit smaller. So
Yeah.
there was certainly a need to restage it to work in the proscenium arch rather than the thrust. So we came into rehearsals knowing that that had to be done. And also, yeah, going, is there anything that we need to change, that we want to improve? Debris and I made a few little tweaks to the script coming into it as little moments that we thought we could perhaps improve. But you've got to be really careful, right? Like, it worked in Stratford, it worked really well. And I was aware in myself of going, we have time to rehearse. Surely we should find different things, or surely there's more stuff to find. And more often than not, we would sort of try it a number of different ways and then go, what was it we did before? Well, let's just go back and do it that way again, because that seemed to work most. But yes, always. And a London audience is a little bit different from a Stratford audience. And, you know, a proscenium arch space requires a different relationship with the audience. Like the whole opening that you saw in the Noel Coward with people moving through the auditorium, there was a little bit of that in Stratford, but much less, because in Stratford the audience feel included anyway, because they can see each other more, and because they're much closer to the action. We didn't need as much of that sort of pageantry. We didn't have Christian up on the stage, as in Ragueneau up on the stage at the very beginning in Stratford. Like, all of those things were put in to do exactly what you identified, which is to include the audience more, because that is a harder thing to do with a proscenium arch, because that fourth wall is there and is some way away. So yes, every effort had to be made to try and include people more. But then beyond that, no, we got all but one of our cast back. So the game for me was just try not to fuck it up and just try not to get in the way of it, and to let the cast be as brilliant as they are, which, yeah. But then within that, I think we have found new, I mean, it's a big play. So even with the weeks of rehearsals we had for the RSC, we'd sort of only, you know, we'd really sort of found versions that worked and stuck with them. So it was nice to find more grace notes and little extra details in there, and everyone in the cast has found new levels, which is just extraordinary to watch.
Yeah. And you know, you mentioned this before, but you must be really proud of what you guys have done. You know, you've taken on a classic and turned it into a five-star hit, not only in the West End, but also they're huge fans of this play out there going and seeing a brilliant adaptation of it, and also new people discovering this play as well. New audiences are discovering the classics, like, you know, Shakespeare's constantly being rediscovered and rediscovered year after year after year. But now you've given this play a chance to do that as well, and more people can go away and read it and have their own interpretations, their own spin on it. There'll probably be some productions in the future which you will go and see, and they will have the line "I love you" there, and you're going.
You missed a trick. I'll go. Yeah, you missed an opportunity there. Yeah, look. I said this to my cast. I remember on the first day of coming back. Like, this, working in this industry is all about, I mean, any aspect of life is all about little compromises, right? And 9 times out of 10, whatever your initial ambition for something, whatever you end up with is different, you know, and sometimes that difference is better, sometimes it's worse, or just you know, move laterally. I can't remember the last time that I set a target for something which me, the crew, Debris, the cast have so hit. You know, that's the pride, I think, is to go, we sort of sat down in the first day of rehearsals and went, this is what I want to achieve with this is why we're doing it, and this is what I want the feeling of this to be in the room. And it's wonderful to be there and go, God, we've done that. That is what we've achieved. And yes, it's lovely to have, because people's familiarity with Cyrano is some people have seen the Steve Martin movie Roxanne, which, you know, has a very happy rom-com ending. You might have seen the Jamie Lloyd version. They might have seen the Depardieu movie from whenever it was back in the 90s. But people's familiarity with the story is quite vague. People say, I say to people, I'm doing Cyrano de Bergerac. They're like, oh, the one with the big nose. I'm like, yeah, but that might be all you know about it. And I love that. I mean, I think a challenge with Shakespeare at the moment is everyone is so familiar with it, which means that from a director's point of view, to your point about audiences earlier, and to thinking about that, I think a really key element of how you keep people off their phones in a theatre or not checking their watches is surprise. And I don't mean shock, I don't mean jump scares, I just mean little things happening that you didn't quite expect, you know, that or a thing is played out in a way you didn't quite imagine, or something just keeps you slightly second guessing and not know what's coming next.
Yeah.
And that is, of course, easier if you're doing a play that everybody doesn't know inside out and back to front. It's easier if you're doing new writing, of course. But even if you're doing a classic, a real thing that Debris and I went into it with the writing and then in the production as well was, if you know the play really well, how can each beat still play out in a slightly surprising way? Like Roxanne arriving as a nun, that's not in the original. Roxanne being older and being married before, not in the original. The beginning of Christian, not in the original. The character Christian being a farmer, not in the original. Like little things where even if you know the play, I hope you're watching it, and as each sort of beat happens, you go, God, that's slightly unexpected. And that's it was a real objective of ours. And again, something that it feels like we've achieved. And it's lovely to know that there will be people in the audience who don't know where the story is going. I love meeting people in the interval who don't know the story, who go, God, it's funny, isn't it? And I'm enjoying it. You go, yeah, buckle in.
Yeah.
We're going somewhere else now.
Yeah, hang on to your hats.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's a lovely thing to go. You have no fucking idea what's coming next.
They're thinking, the first act was funny as
well.
That
was great. Yeah. God, it's
funny.
Joyful.
And they're thinking, we have a lovely evening in the theatre.
That's right. We'll leave with a big old smile on our faces, and I just go, right. Okay. And that's a lovely opportunity to have, right, to surprise people. And it's a thing I think the last time I did a Shakespeare was Midsummer Night's Dream that I did for my sister's company, which again, we took huge liberties with it to try and make it surprising. So I think the challenge with Shakespeare is to go, how do we energize this and make it feel unexpected to an audience who either do know it very well or will probably have read the Spark Notes before they come along as well. And both of those things are, I think, to the detriment of your enjoyment of it.
Yeah. And I feel like, just like when you go to, generally, do you want to direct to the Globe at some point? Is that on your to-do list?
For the right thing. I mean, I have no real appetite to do Shakespeare at the moment.
Fair enough.
That doesn't really. So, I think the Globe do some amazing stuff, but I know that obviously Shakespeare's the big cheese there. So for exactly the reasons that I say, I think I would be going into a Shakespeare going, my impulse is to make this surprising, and that means I'm probably going to go against what's in the play itself, because I'm going to have to put something on this to allow it to be surprising, and that doesn't feel like it serves it very well. And I need to be surprised as well, and I need to be delighted. And for whatever it is at this time of my life, it's not speaking to me in a huge way. So who knows? Who knows?
Never say never.
Never say never.
Indeed, yeah. We get the audience participation and all that. But anyway,
I mean,
it's amazing. Like you just go there and the actors look at you when when they're doing speeches, they'll actually go and interact with the groundlings and just do. Oh, I love it.
It's great, but then it comes back to surprise, right? Like to do that at the Globe is expected. Yeah, and so it is brilliant, but it is less surprising than you go to sit down in the Noel Coward Theatre, which has a sort of austere. We're not here for frivolity here. We're in Noel Coward Theatre. We're a serious place for serious art.
We come from theatre.
Exactly. And so when in that environment you do that same sort of stuff, it has more of an impact than I think potentially it does at the Globe. So yes, I'm always, it's the magician thing again. I'm always trying to go into those situations and into every theatre or performance space and go, what the person who sits down to watch this show, what are all of their expectations for what this experience should be? And how can I fuck with those expectations? A little bit. And if you think that in sitting here in the Noel Coward in this row in the middle you're safe, no one's going to come for you, then how can I come for you a little bit? Or how can I just wake you up a little bit? I mean, those theatres are the worst in terms of people coming and going, I know where the toilets are, I know where the gin and tonics are, I know what the routine of this is. So that's where you get to go, okay, well then let's try and mess with that routine. There's a play I'm writing now that I would love to direct next year, and the way that starts is very, if it ends up being the way that it starts, would be a real sort of, oh god, where are we? Something slightly disorientating, in terms of how the rules of watching a theatre show go. Yeah.
I look forward to it, man.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, no, that'd be good. And if you need actors, you know where to find
Hey, I do. Yeah.
I'm just an email away, my friend.
Yeah,
But
great.
yeah, I'd love to do it, man. Brilliant. So, and of course, yeah, I think I could have you here for another 2 hours talking about Cyrano, Simon. I really could.
Well,
But you're currently on at the Noel Coward Theatre until the
September the 5th.
September the 5th. Cool. And
Yeah.
there are tickets still available now, guys. Today Tix is your best friend with this as well. But also you can get tickets via Delphon Macintosh, the theatres, you know where to go for them. And just get yourselves to this play, guys. It really is a real treat to have something on in the West End, something like this at the moment. So go and see it now. Simon, just before we get to the last two questions, I want to say just thank you so much for your time today, man. I really do appreciate it. And it's been an honor to speak to you today, and thank you for the work that you do, man. It's you're helping people, giving people a laugh during lockdown, and giving some people a really special night in the theatre in London at the moment. And so yeah, keep up the good work, man.
Thanks. That's incredibly kind of you. Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's brilliant, mate. So I've just got two quick questions left for you today. The last two questions for every guest. So first of all, what would you say was a bit of advice you wish you heard when you were starting out?
Bit of advice that I wish I was told when I was starting out.
Yeah.
I think it is be kind to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think this industry is not kind to people, and it has it's a really impressive machine for making you feel like you're not enough, or that you don't have control of your career or your life, and it sort of dangles carrots and then whips them away. It's a really difficult landscape to navigate, and I think I wish I knew when I started out that everybody feels that way, and that everybody struggles with it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that the industry is going to change in that way anytime soon, but I think just make sure that it's always giving as much as it's taking, and that you're enjoying it and getting enough joy from what you're doing in it. And just, find the people around you to look after you, look after them, be a part of something moving through it, and take care of yourself.
Indeed. Yeah. I agree with you completely. And finally today, you might have answered this question already, actually, but what would you say has been an experience or experiences you've had in your career up to now that you'll never, ever forget?
I think, Stage and Cyrano are definitely two of those. I would say I'm going to give you two. Cool. I think the first one is that there was a play that I wanted to do for years called The Dazzle, which was a three-hander. And so when you start out in this industry, especially as a director, another bit of advice I was always told was go into every meeting with like a one-person show that you've got, a three-hander, and like a big classic play. So that sort of whatever the person you're meeting wants, you've got something that you can sort of swivel onto and try to talk about. And I had this three-hander called The Dazzle. It's about the Collier brothers, these two hoarders in New York in the 1920s, based on a true story. Beautiful play, one location that's just a sort of mound of clutter. So it felt inexpensive, three great roles, and nobody wanted to do it. And I was like, this play's brilliant. And it was after my assistant directing period. It was sort of one of the first things I was trying to get done by myself. And I got Andrew Scott to do it. I got him to come and do a reading of it, and he read it, was brilliant, and agreed to do the play. But Andrew didn't really want to do it in a commercial house. And so in the end, with the help of a producer called Emily Dobbs and Michael Grandage and James Bierman, we took over the old Central St. Martin's Art School building. Emily Dobbs had been there already doing a play, Barbarians, I think it was called, anyway. And we took it over and we turned this place into the Collier's house. And we brought audience in, and this was in a building next to where Foyles is now on the Charing Cross Road. It's been demolished and turned into luxury flats now. But you sort of brought an audience in and walked them up 3 flights of stairs into this little room, 130 people a night. And they watched Andrew Scott and David Dawson and Joanna Van Der Ham do this magical, weird play in this space that they'd never been in before. And to talk about audiences, like suddenly aware of how powerful it is for an audience not to feel like they're in charge, to feel like they're there at your invitation, and who knows what's going to happen because they're in a space they're not familiar with. And that show got, I mean, there's a poster of it over, yeah, that's the third over there. And then it got glowing reviews the next day, and although reviews that sort of validation shouldn't matter, it does. And especially when I had been pushing that boulder up a hill for such a long time, and then you get it on and it's magical and you go, I knew it, and it's lovely to have your sort of opinion on something rewarded. So that's one that was really special.
Yeah.
And the second one I think was actually in 7 Actor Dream, the thing I did for Lucy's company, where we had a lot of audience interaction in that as well. And there's a moment at the end of that where I talk about love, where the lovers at the end of Dream are talking to the audience. The whole concept of that production was that there was no set at all. But we, in modern language, as a part of the play, the actors asked the audience to imagine all the things that we needed, to imagine a forest, imagine a tree growing, all this sort of stuff. And at the end, there's a sort of invitation to the audience and a question where the cast look out into the audience and go, have you ever been in love? And they sort of ask it rhetorically. But this one day, an old man replied and he said, yes, I've been in love. And it was my sister, actually, who was in the show. Yeah. And she sort of jumped on this and said, I want you to think of that person now. And this old man welled up and said, I think about her every day. And that's pretty magical, right? When a production has allowed this one person to feel so much and to be so empowered that in a room of people he didn't know an hour and a half ago, he says something like that. And then Lucy held his hand and held the other cast hands. And the whole idea was that as people imagined people they loved, that the lights changed in the theatre. This all happened because of him. And that was a big moment of going, we can make work in the theatre that is really transcendent and that does allow audience members to express things and to feel things, and crucially to feel less alone at moments. And I hope that the work I do achieves that. And that was certainly a moment where I went, oh look, when it works, it's sort of nothing is quite like it.
Yeah, of course you do, man. Of course you do. And I'm not just saying that because you're here or anything, I'm just, saying it's true. I want to see that play now. I want to see the Dazzle. Yeah.
Well, we don't have it. I mean, it was before any kind of National Theatre Live or anything like that. But get a copy and have a read of it if you can. It's by Richard Greenberg, who very sadly passed away last year, but it's a brilliant play. Yeah. I look forward to it. To it. Simon, this has been great. Thank you so much for your time again. I really do appreciate it. And it's been an honor to speak to you. And it's been a real kind of moment. I remember sitting on the sofa watching Staged, the first season during lockdown, and seeing you there on the screen. And this has felt like a staged rehearsal or stage recording session, today. But, just thinking wow, this is cool work that this guy is doing. And, here we are now. And just, it's been amazing, man. And I look forward to more chats with you and the family in the future and everything. And it's been great. And we'll share a rehearsal as well. Of course we will. Of course we will. I look forward to it, man. I look forward to it. I'm there for you. It's brilliant. All right, if you just hang on, I'll finish the recording. We'll have a tiny debrief, then you can shoot back to your family. I know you've got a new little one in the house right now as well. So you're now a dad. So on that stuff, so congrats. This has been great, man. Thank you so much. Guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been the Uncensored Critic podcast. I'll be back very, very, very soon. And Simon, thank you. Thank you, man. Thank you. Pleasure.